So here's the thing about neurocomplexity. It's not a deficiency. If we're neurocomplex, it means we have greater receptivity for perception and cognition, and that, in my words, we are fully aesthetically open. Now, I wanted to just share a few thoughts on the topic of healing and sharing our vulnerability and how this all relates to current levels of understanding around communication, information, and all of this within the context of neurocomplexity. And so I am using notes for this because I've got a lot of clarity that came through on this, and all the pieces need to be here, and basically my brain will jump like way too quickly ahead if I don't outline this. Okay, so anyway, yesterday I saw a reel on Instagram where this woman was talking about how neurodivergent people view information differently from so-called neurotypical people. And I just put this in quotations because I don't want to use these terms to like calcify identity. I just see them as like useful tools for talking about something very specific. And basically, she said that the neurotypical default is to use information as a source of power. And so, whereas neurodivergent tendencies are more to like freely exchange information. So we may ask more questions, we may ask more direct questions, and we literally may just share more information in the spirit of accuracy and transparency and to adequately capture the complexity of whatever we're talking about. And so basically, when I heard this, I just felt so seen. Like, this is probably the most neurodivergent aspect of me. And it just connected a few pieces for me, and just like the floodgates really opened onto like my own inspired understanding about some of the things that are going on here. And so I just wanted to share a few things that I definitely know, and in the spirit of like co-calibrating this with you so I can hopefully hear from your own experience. Okay, so first, neurocomplexity is a more inclusive and accurate concept for how we want to talk about neurodiversity. And basically, at the level of primary processing, there is so much overlap between the existing social categories that we use to try to pick out like unique delineations of a given form of difference, basically. And so what I like about this concept is this more fundamental level that it gets at, which I think has two levels. So more neurocomplexity, again, doesn't refer to a deficiency, but this is actually picking out an ability to perceive with greater specificity or greater sensitivity, and to cognize towards the aim of greater complexity, which I feel is, from my own intuition, this is a core element of neurocomplexity. And so basically, like if you take sensitivity and you factor in the aim of achieving accurate complexity, then what you get is greater specificity. And because of all of this, if you put all of this together, what we're talking about is the ability and need for greater specificity. And this captures the fact that this can show up as like a need for very direct speech, a desire for direct perception, and for dialogical co-regulatory approaches to meaning. And so this is definitely something that I use a lot. It's basically like a double checking with whomever you're talking with that we're on the same page, we're using the terms in the same way, the same concepts, the same frameworks. And it doesn't mean that this is always happening. Like, you don't always have to like go down to fundamentals, but the more time you spend with like greater, more abstract concepts, more ambiguous phenomena, there's a greater need for this type of like co-calibration. And just as an interesting side note, from my own experience, I think this is also why I have been so drawn to philosophy, either both, all traditions, basically, it doesn't matter, just for like the manner in which the philosophical impetus is to put all the cards on the table. And so whether we're talking about analytical or continental philosophy, we have different card decks, maybe different styles of playing. But the aim is the same. Everyone is invited to the table, and whatever we're going to talk about, we're going to make sure everyone's got the same deck of cards. We're going to show all the cards. It's just this spirit of complete like informational equality, basically. And so this type of openness or direct approach basically can seem threatening to some people. So it may come off as too intense. It may come off as like too sensitive, too complex. And so one thing that I've noticed about how some neurocomplex masking can show up, at least it has for me, is a kind of like self-suppression that happens that you learn, where we try to ask less questions. We try to modulate our questions to be less direct, less threatening. So we may use more basic words or simpler words. Or, for a given situation, we just may not respond at all because we know that, or we have this feeling that we would just be adding too much complexity. And so if I talk about my own experience, I can share that I definitely work from a few dimensions of neurocomplexity. So I am high on the giftedness spectrum, which is a legit empirical dimension of neurocomplexity. I've written about this on my Medium blogs. You can look it up. And I'm still healing from complete adrenal burnout from my time in grad school. And I'm healing from complex trauma. And these are all forms of neurodivergence. They're all like under discussed as such, though. So when we talk about this in terms of neurocomplexity, it's more inclusive and it includes all of this. And so if you need like a more scholarly reference, this is a concept developed by therapist scholar Lindsay Macareth. So you can look this up. She's written about neurocomplexity, and she is the founder of the Superwell Collective. And so part of what I want to share, in case this helps others feel validated, if you resonate with this, when I look at like my own relational style, like just in terms of this context, for example, like I'm very high on the dimension of information equality and sharing. And I'm also high on the dimension of what I call co-calibration of meaning. And so these are just two aspects of relating. They're just relevant to this context. And both of these dimensions, I would say, are just direct observations from my own synthesis of firsthand experience. And so these are, for example, what I would put into a pilot study design to see how these shape up in a larger population. And so I just wanted to share all of this in hopes that it does resonate with others who experience this. And, I can validate you. I will. This is very real, and this is just like an invitation for you to talk to me about this, and we can all help each other co-calibrate this phenomenon. And I think this is really important, in the face of a lot of like dominant social patterns or tendencies that often have the bias towards indirect speech, lots of like hidden insider references, like name dropping, shallow forms of specificity, and often like only recognize certain forms of empathy and empathizing, for example. And that's like a huge topic, and I'm going to try to touch on that in an additional video. It's too big for this. But anyways, let me know if this resonates, what you would add to this topic. And, I really look forward to hearing from you and learning from your experience. Thanks.